Hey guys, this is Chris with Omnidek, and I'm going to bring you through in this session how to set up a hierarchy and then how that hierarchy plays throughout the rest of the system. Now, to kind of walk you through where we're at is that we're going to go into the administrative tab. This is effectively a clean system that you probably are seeing for the first time. So this is where you can come in and you'll see kind of the base setup for the hierarchy. Now, you don't have any employees set up yet, but this is the base hierarchy. So as you add users, right, you'll do username and password, and you'll add a new user, which we touched on that a little bit earlier. But whenever you assign them, you're going to assign them to an organization. Now, by default, you probably just put everybody in the employee section whenever you set them up. So what we're doing is we're just putting people into a bucket for the organization. Now, whenever you set up the organization, you got to think of it from this perspective, is that there's hierarchies of the company, which may be rigid, and you may want to set them up that way. But your workflow rules may be a little bit different than that. And also too, it may be kind of confusing in regards to how you set that up if it's maybe a bunch of different divisions or there's a lot of overlap or whatnot. So what you can do is you can get as rigid as you want or as kind of loose as you want as far as setting this up. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One of which is that we've seen clients that if they know that John manages these people and Susan manages these people, then call it John's crew and Susan's crew, right? And then let the people underneath them that's just where you fill it up. So for small businesses, that's generally how a lot of that stuff flows, right? All your service techs are with John because he's the service manager, and maybe your new construction people or your project managers are over here, and then so and so is the head of the project managers. So if it's set up like that, then embrace that, and then it'll just help you kind of visualize it even more so in regards to setting up the system. So the way that the system works is that you'll put everybody kind of probably in this employee bucket if you wanted to. And then whenever we get ready to start building out the hierarchy, it's as simple as coming over into here, hitting the plus button to add a new child organization. And let's say underneath the management here, there's going to be the project managers 1. So you'll add this group here. And then you may want to say, okay, well, underneath there's also going to be kind of the group of people, which is the PM1 supers. And you'll add this group. So you can see how you'll start building out the hierarchy. So it's super, super easy. And then once we're going to set up a user, let's say I'm ready to assign some people in here. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, select the destination by clicking on it, select the users that I'm going to bring in. So you can multi-select this, and then simply add the user to the bucket. And now you'll see a little icon here show that there's actually people in this bucket. And when you click on it, you'll see the person that's actually in the bucket, right? So super, super easy to set up. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to reassign this person back to the administrator. So if I come in here, move the admin back and add them. So now I've put them there. And let's say I don't want to actually do it that way, that I can just very easily come in here and then delete the hierarchy that I just created. So super, super simple to set up. And this is also related to any changes that you make here will also update the actual user group here. Now to kind of show you what one looks like here that's actually already built up, I'm actually going to show you how ours looks because we use Omnidek too for our own internal purposes. So we have the customer experience department, the sales and marketing department, and then we have the developers, right? The managers are in each one of these. And then underneath here, we have the team members that are their subordinates are underneath them. Well, the value of having it set up this way is that anytime these guys do their timesheet or maybe their expense report or request to buy something, it generally has to go through the managerial sequence first. And then based upon some conditions, it impacts maybe if it's over certain dollar amounts, it goes through a different threshold. So this is how we set up our system, but it's super easy. If we get a new hire, I can simply just designate which team I'm going to move them to, select them from the list, and then add the user. So very easy to kind of visually see how this impacts it. So a couple of little nuances as well is that inside of these buckets, we have different security access settings. Now, there's other ways to get more granular in this, but this is a really good kind of catch-all for a lot of these buckets for restricting access. So if you can appreciate here, all of the default data settings that we have here are giving the group of people in these buckets, right? So if I'm in this managerial bucket, I may want to give them access to everything because they're managers and they need to be able to see that, right? It could be, though, that we only want to give them access to themselves. So maybe just the field guys can only see themselves in here. We restrict it down to the individual level. Or we can actually give them access to the children underneath them. So in this case, we may want to give them access to, although they have access to everything, they may want to give them access to maybe themselves and also the people underneath them. And then this would restrict access to this group, to just this grouping and this grouping as well, this organization. So it's very easy to set this stuff up. If you want, this is kind of more blanket security, just kind of helps you set this stuff up. So when you assign somebody to the organization, they inherit these rules here. Now, where this plays kind of in the overall usability of the system is that in the workflows themselves, we can leverage both conditions on the form. So if it's answered a certain way on the form, a question, it can navigate through a different channel, but it can also navigate through the hierarchy or both. So they work in conjunction. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like inside of our workflow engine. And we're going to get more into how to set up a workflow in more detail, but this will give you an example of how all this stuff plays. So in this case, whenever you start a workflow, it actually starts with a simple start and end. So for example, if I was just going to create a new one, I'd select the form that I'm going to build a workflow from. And let's say it's, one of these ones here. And I can name it. Let's say this is a sprint workflow. I can set this as the default one and select a category. If need be, this would be on the services side. And I create it. I would start here with a blank canvas. So if I needed to build a new node, I'd select the endpoint and I'd say, well, it doesn't need to end there. It needs to start and maybe create an approval or maybe a hierarchy. And this is where I can create a hierarchy node that actually flows to a group of managers. So by selecting the manager group, I can come in here and say, okay, I want the development team, and I want the OCX team, and I want the sales and marketing team to actually be the hierarchy nodes for that. And I just add these as managers, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and do this, but this is kind of the process of setting one up from scratch. So let me go ahead and show you what this thing looks like here that's already filled out. So this is the workflow for our purchase requisition. So anytime somebody in the company wants to buy something, it follows this node. Is that anybody can start a form and it flows up the workflow hierarchy. So this means that the development manager, the OCX manager, or the sales and marketing manager reviews anything that gets submitted out. So it's effectively the equivalent of going to your direct supervisor first, regardless of how it's filled out. Now, once the direct supervisor has approved it, and only if it's approved it, it now flows to a condition. Well, the condition is set forth in the way that the form is answered. So you'll select the answer type here on the form, how it's answered, and then from here you'll add a condition. So in this case, the condition is if it's over a certain dollar amount. So if it's false, that means it's less than $100, it just goes to the accountant for processing. If it's true, that means it's over $100, then from here it's got a level of approval, which is a senior supervisor. Senior supervisor then approves it, then it goes to accounting, and then it ends. So this is how we integrate both the hierarchy as well as the conditions set forth on the form to actually complete a particular work process. This offers very easy setup because this is some pretty complex stuff based upon if your company's really big with a pretty diverse hierarchy, we can set this thing up in seconds as far as setting up a really complex workflow for a whole bunch of people, right? So very easy to set up. That's how hierarchy plays in the whole organization of the actual work process itself. So I definitely encourage you to go ahead and get started. You can start off by simply, if you're creating users, which we've already kind of talked about, go ahead and create your users, go ahead and assign them to the organizational structure that you want, probably just employees just getting started out. And then we'll go start building the organizational structure like we mentioned earlier, just by creating those nodes and then creating that moving forward. So super simple to set up. I definitely encourage you to continue on with this tutorial on how to get your Omnidek system set up. We look forward to having you as a client. And if you have any additional questions, you can always visit our help page up here just by clicking the link, and then you can have a link directly to our knowledge base, or you can submit a ticket to our help desk team to help you out. So thanks so much again for choosing Omnidek as your business platform, and we look forward to working with you soon. So continue on with the tutorial. Thanks.